When it comes to the Smash Bros. Franchise, I think it's safe to say that the latest of the games, Ultimate, is fitting of its title and is honestly the best of the series. Not only does it host a roster of characters that is overwhelming and still growing as of this video going live, the options to play with, the balance of the characters themselves, and just the representation of video games as a whole outdoes nearly any other crossover before it. And while Nintendo themselves has kind of been off lately, that still doesn't deny just how big this game has become, or what I consider to be its best aspect, the spirits. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. When it comes to the spirit systems of Smash Ultimate, I feel like a lot of people actually don't give it the attention that it deserves. From what I've been able to tell, they go through the spirit board and maybe the World of Light once, and that's about it. They're done. And frankly, I think this is a bit of a disservice not only to the creators of the series, but just how awesome an implementation it is. Just in case that we've got folks who aren't familiar with the spirits, either because they've never played Smash Bros. Ultimate at all, or they've just ignored them because they aren't the fighters, let me give you a basic rundown. One of the major game modes of Ultimate is called the World of Light, which is sort of a story mode in the game. I say sort of, mostly because the creators of Smash Bros. Are against the concept of making major story elements, namely cutscenes and the like, mostly because they felt like everything would just end up on YouTube. And I can't really blame them for that either, considering that's exactly what happened to the last major story mode of the series, known as the Subspace Emissary from Smash Bros. Brawl. Regardless, we do get a few story elements from this World of Light game mode, and the basic idea is this. A giant being of light known as Galeem stands before all the collected characters of Smash Bros., who have gathered to fight it, only to fail when their enemy unleashes a blast of light that is able to consume them and nearly every aspect of their universe. It turns every character that's not a playable fighter into what we know as the spirits, and uses them to power up copies of the fighters that you fight throughout the World of Light, a massive sprawling map that was made by Galeem after he had consumed the world and the universe. So what exactly do spirits do then, being such a major gameplay and lore aspect of Ultimate? Well, when they're used by the player, they'll actually gift them abilities that will usually be associated with the spirit in question. King Boo from the Mario franchise, for example, will give characters floatier jumps in the air, while Alucard from the Castlevania series will increase the damage by swords. It's when you fight the spirits, however, that things become much more interesting. Remember, the lore for this game is the fact that the spirits are possessing copies of the fighters to serve Galeem, and as such it allows us to fight these characters even though they're not playable characters in the game. To do this, every single fight with a spirit has been crafted to do its absolute best in being faithful to the character possessing it. This is what the creator of Smash Bros. And Kirby, Masahiro Sakurai, means when he wants players to use a little bit of imagination to really believe that the spirits the folks are fighting are the real deal, since in a sense they are. Let's be honest, Smash as a fighting game is insane enough as is, with over 80 characters to choose from as of this video. Using those characters and changing the battle rules to make them emulate over 1,000 different spirits allows them to represent these characters and give them the spotlight, while still allowing them to have distinct fighters for the actual proper game. Let's actually look at just how well this can be done by bringing up one of the more basic spirits in the game, the Mario enemy Blooper. Already, just by the loading screen alone, you can tell just how much there is that is dedicated to making this fight as close as you can to fighting an actual blooper. We see that we're up against multiple Inklings, taking in the fact that bloopers are squids, as well as their tendency to gather in groups. The gravity of the level is reduced, better emulating the bloopers' natural habit of being underwater and floating about. And in battle themselves, they almost entirely focus on jumping. Add in the music that one normally associates with the enemy, as well as fighting on the Mario level associated with water, and you've actually got a pretty good interpretation of what it is to fight a blooper in Smash Bros. Without making them an actual fighter in the game itself. Now, while this does seem like a very simple system and idea, what takes it so much further is just how well Sakurai and the rest of the developers behind Smash were actually able to bring in some characters in ways that just make them click. Here's an example. Let's take a look at the Warframe character, the Lotus. I won't go into much detail about the actual character or her world, since that's a topic for fascinating fiction all on its own. But needless to say that the fight is pretty interesting once you get down to it. It starts you with fighting Bayonetta on a space stage from Metroid. Makes sense, considering the fact that the Lotus is a character dressed in dark clothes, is a big power figure in Warframe, and Warframe itself is a space-based game. Now, this alone would actually be a pretty weak representation of the character if just left to that, but they don't. They add in an assist trophy character, essentially a helper, that comes in and fights alongside the Lotus. Now, to anybody who's just playing through the game normally, they just might see the helper in question, which is Metal Fox from the Metal Gear franchise. But to those who are familiar with Warframe, they know who it represents, since the body armor, the sword, and the general actions that Metal Fox takes is a perfect one-to-one to the main playable characters from the Warframe franchise, the Tenno. And this is how all the spirit fights are handled, allowing you to experience these characters and their worlds without actually having to implement them as a fighter in the game. Some spirit fights go even further than that, like Pauline, who represents both the original Donkey Kong game thanks to its level and character choice, but also Mario Odyssey thanks to its musical choice, the fact that Mario's in his wedding costume, and overall just the feel of the fight. The only real complaint I can personally lodge against the spirit system is, well, simply the fact that we, the players, are unable to use the creative tools ourselves to make our own spirit battles. While we do have the stage creator and we also have different rules and options through the game's natural setup to actually make our own custom fights, we're not given the freedom to really set up our own challenges like the spirits are. I think that if we were given that option to be able to do it and share it with our friends, it would make a lot of content that would last well beyond the game's lifespan. But that's honestly one of the reasons why I wanted to make this a topic for fascinating fiction in the first place. We've got a game here that, for all the problems of its parent company and the legal hoops it had to jump through, is a love letter to games from not only pretty much every major system, but to the history as a whole. It honors games that are older than I am, up to ones that only came out a few years ago, from the biggest of the AAA to the indie games that are made by a few people. With a few more DLC characters still yet to come, and new spirits being added constantly even without the DLC, I think it cannot be denied that Smash Bros. Ultimate is a game that lives up to its tagline. Everyone is here, and we're all here to play. With that, I hope you have all enjoyed another episode of Fascinating Fiction, and will hopefully look forward for more to come. Should you have any suggestions on something you'd like to see me cover, please leave a comment below, as well as liking the video and subscribing if you wish to see more content like this. It really does help us out. Be sure to also check out Getting With the Program, a more off-the-cuff show in which Kitty Cross, Ash and Sky and I go through a series that one of us are not familiar with episode by episode, and give our honest thoughts about them. I also have a Twitter and a Twitch if you wish to follow us there, where we usually will play games and just give my general thoughts about what's going on at the time. But until then, folks, stay frosty.